So the metaverse was a concept that started with an absolute bang. And right after that announcement from Mark Zuckerberg a couple years ago, Quest 2 sales went through the roof. People were absolutely pumped. But just as quickly as that fervor started, it died off and got replaced with total disinterest, which makes it even stranger that so many companies are putting so much effort into this technology right now. So at this point, I think it's fair to ask, did the metaverse fail? And if so, what led to that failure? Today, I'm diving into exactly what's going on in this space right now and what it means for metaverse businesses. My name is Trent Kennelly. I'm a Web3 marketing strategist, and this is the best place for you to learn about Web3, NFTs, AI, the metaverse, and how to market it all. So if that sounds good to you and you're excited, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, comment to let me know whether you think this thing is dead or if there is still some life to be squeezed out of it. I would love to get your thoughts, and let's get started. So currently the metaverse is in this weird space between something highly successful and something really obscure. I mean, we're all aware of it, right? We all saw Ready Player One, and we've been bludgeoned by Meta's attempts to force us to use their metaverse, which, by the way, isn't even close to the best metaverse on the market today. And in fact, Meta's Reality Labs has worked so hard to convince us all to use their metaverse that they lost $13.7 billion in 2022, $3.99 billion in Q1 of 2023 alone, and far more losses expected in the future. And as one of Elon Musk's many bumbles in the past has showed us all, that is an enormous amount of money, and so much that it could potentially fix world hunger several times over. It's an incredible amount of money that they are losing on this product. So the current state of Meta's attempts at building a metaverse are losing them a lot of money, but is it at least netting them users? Well, they're claiming to have had 6 million monthly active users as of last October 2022, which is the most recent data I've been able to find. But that truly is not a lot when you consider their Threads launch of 100 million accounts within 48 hours just a couple weeks ago. Or to bring it to a more apples to apples comparison, the monthly active users of the PlayStation console, which is around 115 million monthly active users, which means we have to say right now that this bid is not paying off. But the metaverse is a long game, right? I mean, even the head of Reality Labs has said that there's a lot more development before this thing is ready for the utility that sci-fi enthusiasts have always dreamed of. And we've definitely seen continued development in this area. Big companies like Lenovo are putting a lot of money into the space, and we're seeing more and more high quality products coming through as well, including haptic and motion sensing suits. Plus, some of the bigger metaverses like Decentraland and Sandbox are just getting better and better over time as well. So with all of the evidence out there of companies putting big money into this concept, we have to finally ask the question, did it fail? And the answer to that question is really not straightforward. If somebody today yelled, "Time's up, put your pencils down," the answer would be an unequivocal yes, it totally failed. You can't show a negative ROI of over 1,000%. I'm probably even being too conservative with that estimate, and call something a success no matter how badly Silicon Valley wants you to believe that that makes it successful. But time is still running on this clock, so I think it's fair to look at a few different factors before we make a final determination here. First, is there mass adoption? And if not, will that ever come about? So for any social digital product, mass adoption is an important question, because if you don't have a lot of people using it, then the people that do show up, we're going to quickly lose interest, and then they're going to leave, and then they're never going to come back. A great example of this is Google+. So Google+ had a huge surge when it first opened. Everybody was excited to be there, but that petered out almost instantaneously. And then with nobody on the platform, the people that were there quickly left, and mass adoption kind of dissipated into the ether, right? And this really comes down to one thing. There is one question that dictates mass adoption, and that is mob mentality. Especially for social apps like anything from Meta, if there aren't people on the platform, nobody is going to want to be there. Essentially, this follows that concept of mob rule, that being that humans are going to tend to make group decisions and follow the crowd in that direction. If the crowd decides that Facebook is for old people, suddenly there are a lot fewer young people on the platform. If they decide Threads is boring and featureless, suddenly there's an exodus. So let's go back to that 6 million monthly active user number. Is that a lot? Well, if monthly active users are the indicator that we're going to go with, and that's the thing that's going to help us decide failure level, then no, it's definitely not enough. I mean, YouTube currently sees 1.2 billion monthly active users, PlayStation 115 million, etc. So by comparison, There is no comparison. This is an absolute drop in the bucket. And all of that is better than the far more superior metaverse Decentraland, which sees only 8,000 monthly active users. But is there any path at this point, looking at these different metaverses that are not getting the traffic we want, to becoming more sustainable? Now, you might at this point be going, well, hang on, Trent. So I think that actually there's a big market here. We've got 250 million monthly active users between Fortnite and Minecraft. And yeah, maybe you're right, but I don't think that those really fold into the metaverse concept at all. They're games, right? Metaverse is more than games. I don't think it's fair to fold these two in because a metaverse goes beyond a single game. These are a single game, right? So if you count these assets, sure, you could be saying that the metaverse concept is going to succeed, but that's kind of like saying Enron is profitable, right? It might be true on the books. That doesn't mean it's actually true. But there is maybe one game that's worth looking at here, and that is Roblox. So Roblox is a platform that's mimicked a metaverse better than just about any other game that's been folded into this category, and people are rabid for it. So if that's the path that's taken by the wider metaverse, that they follow the path of Roblox, is there any chance for the metaverse concept to survive? Possibly. But considering all of those things that have to change about the metaverse to possibly bring it into a space where people are going to want to be there, we still need to ask another question. What's the actual utility right now? And what do I mean by utility? I mean, how is it used? How are people getting something out of it that they feel the need to use because it makes their life easier? Honestly, there's not much right now. You can go on to any metaverse, you can interact with friends, have dance parties, go look at the latest sponsorship drive from a company that rented a space in a metaverse, but that's a long way from what we've dreamed of. Things like going to school and work in a metaverse environment, taking care of government obligations, etc. I mean, yeah, there are some examples of important things that are happening in the metaverse right now. For instance, that court hearing that occurred a couple months ago in Colombia, which happened through Horizon, but I gotta say that's just anecdotal. It's interesting, but it's anecdotal. It's only one example. It doesn't really encompass everything. In that court hearing and the PR around it, they were making arguments about how this system is better for procedural justice because you have people write kind of in an avatar form rather than over Zoom. But ultimately, it kind of feels like a showpiece because both plaintiff and defendant accepted a request to use this technology, and it kind of sounds like they just wanted to do it rather than needed to for some reason or another. So really, this is what comes down to right now. This is the real question. Did they need to do it? Is there a need? Is there something this technology offers that is going to drive a feeling of necessity in its users? See, all the proponents of the metaverse like to treat this as a Web3 solution, something that's going to revolutionize the way we live our lives in the way that Web 1 and Web 2 did in their times, right? But so far, that's been kind of hard to see. The internet has in many ways drastically changed and advanced the way that humans move through the world, direct interactions at your fingertips, the inability to escape work chats, all of the world's knowledge being accessible. It changed the job market, our productivity, and everything. Is there any way that we're going to be able to say the same thing for the metaverse? I mean, it's kind of easy to make things up in your imagination at this point, but if we truly look at the drastic amount of innovation that's come since Zuck's big announcement almost 2 years ago, is there anything that has driven that feeling of need? It's pretty hard to say yes. But the best thing that we've seen come from this period is Boson Protocol, which is a way to buy physical things in digital metaverses. And technology like that is phenomenal and it's needed, but without other utilities, it just isn't going to make the jump to something that we use every single day. So on this point, I also see that the metaverse has failed. Finally, cost benefit timescale analysis. So the cost benefit analysis of building the metaverse has already been discussed ad nauseum. We know even from this video that the losses incurred by the biggest metaverse, Horizon Worlds, is roughly as big as the GDP of the poorest 19 countries in the world combined. And sure, right now we can easily say that the costs vastly outweigh the benefits. The amount of money that they're pouring into this is enough to give most business owners heart palpitations, if not total heart attacks. But clearly, they're prepared for this on some level, so the question is, how long? Some businesses fail not because the idea is bad and not because the idea is poorly executed, but instead because the business was just too early and couldn't find its way through to that point of viability. So the question here is pretty simple. If we assume the losses for Reality Labs is roughly $1.5 billion a month, which is what it's been over the last year and a quarter, and Meta in general is earning, let's say, $1.7 billion a month, though that that number fluctuates pretty widely, then is there a point where this cost just becomes unsustainable on their bottom line? And by the way, let's assume that Meta is worth a total of 800 billion right now when we start this math. So clearly they're making just slightly more than Reality Labs is losing every month in this calculation. So they're making 200 million net, right? And yeah, that's going to allow them to grow, albeit slower than they normally do, but maybe it's still possible that they can pull this thing off if we ignore every other expense of the organization, which of course we can't do, but let's just keep it pure for the moment, okay? So I think that it sounds maybe passable, right? Except that that's not the only factor we absolutely need to take into account in this calculation. The net worth of the company is also based on investor confidence. So we have to take that into account here, because if the investors aren't confident, suddenly there is no business, right? Investors really don't like losing money. So this is a real question. So let's just assume that the net worth reduces month over month as a result of investor confidence reduction by 1%, okay? But we're being conservative. I don't know what that looks like. It's a very, very loose number. Now you can see a steady loss in the worth of the company until a few years down the line, which, by the way, would probably come faster because this is more of a snowball thing rather than a steady decrease, right? We're going to see that the stock price will bottom out. So I think it's pretty clear that unless they can find the breakthrough that they're looking for very soon, the entire enterprise is at risk, and I have to call it a failure for that reason. So there you go. I love this idea, but right now I'm just not sure how they're going to pull it out of the mud. There's potential, but it's going to take a lot of elbow grease to properly position it so people will decide it's worth spending their time there. Let me know what you think about this idea, if you consider it a failure, or what you think could be done to improve the situation. I would love to talk it out even in the comments. Otherwise, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, and I will catch you in the next one.